Welcome to Book live stream here across the Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm social channels. James, we are looking at an 8-game Tuesday slate. We've had a nice little 5-game worth of day baseball leading us into tonight's main slate. How you feeling about everything, man?
It's another baseball slate. Generally you and I like 8-game slates and sits in kind of our comfort zone. This is not one of those slates. There are not a lot of elite pitchers on today's board. There are not a lot of elite offenses, conversely. So, there's not a lot of elite game totals. There's not, truthfully, a lot to necessarily like about this slate. That being said, we're still going to dive in and give you all the best plays of the day. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely not my favorite slate of the year. That's for sure.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time, right? We get into these parts of where you hit rotations, right? And sometimes you get elite pitching, sometimes you get some bad pitching. This is like a weird mix where it's good pitching versus teams that we generally want to play. And then it's like bad pitching, but also against bad offenses. So you're kind of in this like limbo spot. We love playing Atlanta. We don't necessarily love playing Atlanta against Sandy. We love pitching Sandy. We don't necessarily want to play him against Atlanta. We might, right? So we find ourselves definitely in these spots where maybe we're going to have some guys in our lineup that we're a bit uncomfortable with, or we don't generally find ourselves leading towards. Does Vegas have any answers for us here, James? Are we looking at any spread or line movement that have changed since we did the podcast this morning?
Nothing in terms of nothing in significance. I mean, the Angels money line has risen from opening at minus 215 to minus 230 in DraftKings. So obviously, in line with what we thought this morning, everyone going to bet Angels against Oakland. Kodai Senga and the Mets about the same, minus 205, opened at minus 202.
Mm-hmm.
The Dodgers have ballooned a little bit, minus 118, essentially a pick 'em to open. Now minus 140 on DraftKings Sportsbook, even wider odds over on FanDuel Sportsbook. Other than that, like nothing in terms of money line. And then you look at over-unders. What did we say yesterday? I think there was one game over 8.5 implied runs. We're at 2.
Right.
The Angels Athletics are at 9.5. So another Angels Athletics game with a high game total. There's been a lot of runs scored in that series so far, but Patrick Sandoval, probably the best pitcher that has pitched in this series thus far.
Yeah.
Griffin Canning was pretty good last night. And then the Giants and Cardinals have, in some spots, ballooned to 9. So that's it. Like nothing of significance. We have the weather report suggesting there's going to be some rain in the forecast. There's going to be good pitching weather in Chicago once again because it's cold. Like, just not a lot to love on the offensive end, at least in Vegas.
To speak to sort of where we're at, you mentioned Sandoval here. Quick look at the draft percentage forecaster that we got, over at Fantasy Alarm here. Patrick Sandoval looking like he's going to be the top rostered starting pitcher tonight.
Yep.
Steven Matz also right up there among the top roster pitchers. We talk a lot about San Francisco's struggles against lefties. It is a weird night when it comes to rostership because we're looking at two guys under $7,000 that are going to be very highly rostered. And that leaves maybe some leverage there, right? If those guys don't pitch to their potential or don't hit value, and they're that rostered, and you can have an edge there.
I guess it doesn't really surprise me all that much because when we dive into pitching, like there are definitely question marks at the top of the position, and there are a lot of elite hitters. It's just they're also in like weird spots. So like I get why the ownership is going in the direction it is, but yeah, it's kind of weird to see Steven Matz particularly as the second highest rostered
I'm always
pitcher than Ray.
surprised to see Steven Matz still pitching in baseball, honestly. So when his name pops up, I'm like, oh, Steven Matz is still around. Okay. But yeah, listen, we are a slave to the statistics, right? And as we continue to grow the sample size, as the season moves along, and things like don't get better for San Francisco against left-handed
Right.
pitching, that's just a matchup, especially on a slate like today, that you have to just key in on, especially when the rostership is kind of heading you down into that direction. So we can just dive into the pitching. We're talking about the two value plays that are seemingly going to be the chalk here tonight, with Sandoval in that matchup against Oakland and Matt on the road against San Francisco. When it comes to the top price guys, though, we have Kodai Senga here against Washington at home. We have Sandy Alcantara on the road against Atlanta. We have Bryce Elder at home against Miami. Taijuan Walker at home against Seattle. Logan Gilbert on the road against Philly. And Hunter Brown on the road against Tampa Bay as your 9K and above group. 6 pitchers there over 9K. But, where do you find the best matchup to be?
So in terms of matchup, I mean, Washington exists in this world of baseball. So Senga theoretically has the best matchup. Washington is amongst the bottom in every statistical category offensively, 28th in OPS against right-handed pitching. That's the worst on this slate. So like Senga has the best matchup, but it's not always just about matchup. It's about the pitcher and it's about the price. And Senga hasn't been great in his
Right.
last few outings against. I mean, Oakland is not a good team, and he labored and couldn't even get through 5 innings, and his team scored 17 runs for him. So obviously, didn't lose there. But
Right.
then he labored through a giant start where he only got 9.9 fantasy points at 10-3. So best matchup, I think it's Kodai Senga.
Mm-hmm.
Not my favorite pitcher of this tier, though.
Yeah, I agree with you. For me, you and I kind of went back and forth on this on the podcast. We'll kind of open that up to everybody because we like sort of opposite pitches here. It's not that we don't like the other guy. I prefer Bryce Elder here. You liked Sandy Alcantara. For me, it's just Miami is an easier lineup to pitch against than Atlanta. We've seen Charlie Morton last night turn back the clock, look phenomenal against Miami. We saw what Spencer Strider did. Bryce Elder's looked really good to begin his season here. Is he the same strikeout pitcher as those two previous guys? No, but Miami gives you the boost a little bit when it comes to strikeout numbers. So for me, I'm taking the better offense. I'm taking Elder in the better matchup, but I know that you like Sandy here a lot as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even necessarily. I'm gonna kind of disagree with the boost of strikeout appeal because they are both bad against right-handed pitching this year. Atlanta's percentage points ahead of Miami in terms of strikeout rate. So I'm going to disagree that Elder has the boost in strikeouts. I don't believe that to be true. I think Alcantara has as high of a ceiling, if not higher, in strikeout department.
Yeah, I meant that Elder actually gets a boost in strikeouts for his own benefit, right? Not generally a monster strikeout guy, but against Miami, he has the ability to increase his strikeout floor.
Okay, fair. Which is correct. I think Atlanta, they are obviously potent. I'm not discrediting them at all. They're 11th in OPS, but I think without looking at that number, expectations might have been higher than 11th. They've really benefited from their 187 team ISO, but again, 5th in strikeout rate. OBP pretty mediocre. Like Sandy isn't a guy to really put you on base. I know there's 6 walks, but 4 of them came in the first start. He's only walked 2 people since. Listen, just in terms of talent, in terms of getting deeper into games, in terms of everything to do with Sandy Alcantara, I am perfectly fine going to him over Elder. And then you factor in Elder is higher owned projected than Alcantara, not by a lot. And, most of the ownership tonight is gearing towards the 2 value guys that we've briefly touched on and probably we'll talk about a little bit more in depth. But I like the leverage on Alcantara. He's been cleared from his biceps tendonitis that he was suffering, which you and I were kind of talking about on the podcast this morning. Like, why was he kind of limited? Well, there you go. There was something in the biceps that could have depressed his pitch count a little bit.
Right.
Cleared of that. I just based on talent alone and the Atlanta strikeout rate, lean Alcantara. Because let's face it, like when he's going good, he is going to be 10 to 11K every single slate.
Yep.
So I'm just trusting talent and the fact that the bicep injury has seemingly been put to rest. We'll see if
Sure.
that continues tonight. But I like Bryce Elder quite a bit. I just, obviously, if you're playing Alcantara and Elder, you're in a tournament, like you're limiting yourself. You can only get one win in
Right.
that scenario.
Yep. And on smaller slates, like generally that's okay. You and I took part the late slate last night, and we threw pitchers that were against each other because if one
Right.
gets 12 fantasy points on a smaller slate, that may be enough to kind of help you out there. We mentioned the weather this morning on the podcast here, just to touch base on that. Here, there is still a potential delay in a couple of these games. Doesn't seem like anything's strong enough to completely postpone anything, but we may have a delayed start or an in-game delay. Seattle, Philadelphia, and Washington and New York, both of those games here, potential for some rain in the area. Nothing heavy enough we would think to cause a postponement. But as we get closer to roster lock, you certainly have to be paying attention to what's going on there. But it could be a little bit of a wet one. I don't know if that takes you off any of the pitching, though, James. And not that we're looking so much so at Mackenzie Gore. Maybe some are tonight against the Mets, but Senga, Walker, Gilbert, if this ends up being a start and stop situation, those guys may not come back up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's always the risk you run using guys that are involved in poor weather or potentially poor weather. It doesn't look like there's anything that is going to cause much issue. So like I'm fine getting to Logan Gilbert. I mentioned it on the podcast this morning. I think he has a pretty good matchup against Philly, who just really hasn't like hit for a lot of power this year. And Gilbert's been very consistent in terms of strikeouts and very consistent in terms of not giving up free passes.
Right.
Every so often, he does struggle against right-handed bats. That's been kind of his thing for the last few years. Like weirdly enough, just a reverse splits pitcher. So, we do have to worry about that with like Trey Turner, Nick Castellanos, but also the splits have kind of come to a like 50-50 this year where everyone's just bad against Logan Gilbert. So
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine getting to Logan Gilbert here at 91. I don't really have worry about the weather, but obviously, like you said, like if it is a start and stop, that's concerning. I would hope there would just be like a delayed start,
Yeah.
move on, because there's always those like it seems like the rain is going to start around game time and then stop. So if we're just like delaying for a little bit longer, let's do that.
Do you prefer Gilbert over Walker in this spot?
Yes.
If we move on down into this mid-tier range, or even like the low 9K, 8K, got Hunter Brown against Tampa Bay, Desclafani here against Mats, Waka going up against the Cubs and Smiley. Any interest, any appeal here? I mean, we know Hunter Brown, highly touted pitching prospect here. Not a great start against Atlanta. Strikeouts have been decent. He put together back-to-back shutout outings against Minnesota and Texas. Any interest in him going up against Tampa Bay here?
For tournaments, it's fine. Mild interest because Tampa has just been so potent. Mild interest. I think this is probably the worst tier of pitching on the entire slate. Like Desclafani, he's been surprisingly good after like kind of an unlucky, injured, riddled year last year. But St. Louis is pretty potent themselves. Not like the highest strikeout ceiling on Desclafani in this matchup either. Waka, like, I don't know what to make of him because we saw like Wrigley Field when there's bad weather and winds blowing in, is just tough to hit in other than other than Jan Gomes. Like Jan Gomes is obviously weatherproof. So I guess I can get to Michael Waka, but like why would I mean in 3 of the 4 starts he's made, he's given up 4+ earned runs. So I think this is the worst tier of pitching of the night.
Yeah, that could certainly put agreement with you on that one too. Moving down into the value tier, we have Mackenzie Gore, we got Drew Smiley, Gonsolin making his season debut. We talked about Sandoval, Matz, Rosny Contreras. I mean, again, we keyed in on Sandoval and Matz already. Are you interested in any of the other guys down here?
Yeah, I mean, I like Drew Smiley in a poor hitting environment. 10 strikeouts. He was, a Jan Gomes tackle away from a perfect game potentially. At least going into the 8th inning with a perfect game. I obviously would have seen what would have happened in the 9th, but if he doesn't get tackled, you never know. Good weather. San Diego's offense just ice cold, even with Tatis back, even with Tatis dancing in the outfield after being
Yeah.
showered with steroid chance. There was a obscene gesture in that involved as well. It was a very interesting moment for Fernando Tatis, and but they've been pretty bad against lefties this year. They're not walking. They're not really striking out a lot, but 688 OPS is 20th in the league. So I kind of like Drew Smiley to be a little contrarian. It looks like Padres are actually getting a lot of love offensively, and I'm not sure what merit there is behind that. Maybe it's just because people are gonna be using Sandoval and Mats and like, hey, I have all this money, let me just spend up on the Padres. I like Smiley. I think Sandoval is like the clear cut one of your 2 starters in cash games. Just given Oakland's at times struggles. I know he hasn't been great, but he looked good in his first 2 starts. The strikeouts have been there, which we were looking for in his first 2 starts. They didn't exist. They have 11 strikeouts in his last 7 2/3. So I think Sandoval is a lock and load SP2 in cash. The Steven Matz thing is interesting, and we talked about it on the pod because the Giants have really been bad against lefties. There's no denying it. They've been terrible. They strike out almost as much as anyone. Just the Milwaukee Brewers strike out more.
Yeah.
They don't hit. It's not like they're striking out and hitting for power. Like they're just not a 110 ISO. But what has Steven Matz done that
He's
merits
pitched into the
this?
6th in all 4 of his starts. He's thrown 90 plus pitches in all 4 of his starts. He had maxed out at 110 against Pittsburgh. For whatever reason, they let him go that long. So I think at the very least, innings, right? Like one of those starts was in Coors. This is maybe his best matchup. Like we scoff at Pittsburgh, but they're leading the division right now. So
Yep.
This could be, if they're going to give him the opportunity to pitch 6 innings and throw 90 plus pitches, 6 and 7, 2 games with 7 strikeouts, a 6 strikeout game. We could be looking at 6 innings, 3 earned, 8 Ks today, and you'll live with that at 6K.
Here's my worry. My one worry is looking at a projected lineup. 7 righties are projected to go against Steven Matz. Righties this year are batting .347 with a .980 OPS and a .423 WOBA.
Yeah, so it's what they say it's the immovable object versus the
yeah
whatever. It's like, all right, so San Francisco can't hit a lefty to save their life. They throw righties at them all the time. It doesn't seem to matter. We went through the batting average of the guys on their team the other day against lefties, and only 2 of them were hitting over 300. And Matz is getting killed by every lefty. So one of those becomes false today, right? Like either the Giants hit lefties or Matz beats righties. Which one do you think is more likely to happen? Because you play one of them, right? If you think Matz is going to continue to get rocked, then you play Haniger and Flores and JD Davis tonight and that whole crew. Or if you think Matz is going to shut down the Giants, you spend $6,000 on Steven Matz.
You're not wrong. I like the Giants. Maybe this
Make
turns
two
around.
lineups, play go both ends of it, right? Like it's
Yeah, and it's not even one of those situations where I'm like necessarily like I'm stacking the Giants. It just might be a situation where I'm more so avoiding Mats. Like I think that the Giants could do enough damage to Mats. But then again, like I'm also not opposed to using Steven Mats. If I'm picking between Sandoval and Mats of the two, I'd pick Sandoval. And if we wanted to throw Drew Smiley in there, I'd prefer Drew Smiley just for I think he's flashed obviously more upside considering his last start.
yeah, and the Padres, even when they get everybody in that lineup, they still for whatever reason underwhelm a bit. So let's go on over to catcher here. Catcher position at the top, we got Real Muto at 52, Sean Murphy at 49 as your top priced plays. I don't think we're getting either of those two. Not really guys we're looking to target. So if we're in the mid tier, Betancourt's up to sixth in that lineup. He's $3,900. Cal Raleigh is at 4K. Langoliers, as you mentioned, he homered last night. He's got some decent power. Though we like Sandoval, if you're not pitching Sandoval, then maybe Langoliers there for Oakland is somebody that you're taking a peek at. Yan Gomes had a monster night, though we generally like him against lefties instead of righties. Waka hasn't been great. So those guys are all fine, but you keyed in on Keibert Ruiz last night, and we ran the clip of that call this morning going up against Kodai Senga. We talked about the splits Senga has against lefties, and Ruiz's strong side this season has been from the left side of the plate.
Yeah, and he's coming into this game scorching hot. 2 3-hit games over his last 4, including a 4-game hit streak. Over his last 10 games in general, 368 with a 915 OPS, like getting on base at a high clip, hitting for power. So he's really just kind of coming into his own. And I think that was like the expectation initially. Like, oh, Kyber Ruiz is going to be our savior behind the plate. Like that hasn't happened, but it's slowly coming around. And by the time we mentioned the statistics, the stats have up to 327 now after his big night
Right.
on Tuesday. It's 375 Woba. Both his home runs have come against lefties. And Kodai Senga, you know, and it's something that we talked about. Like he has struggled in back-to-back starts. He has struggled with lefties in general. 286
Right.
average against, 960 OPS, 418 Woba allowed. I'm not sitting here, and neither would you sit here and suggest using a bunch of nationals. That's not at all what we're doing. But like they are running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lefties out there tonight.
Yeah.
One of them being Kyber Ruiz hitting the middle of that lineup. So I do like Kyber Ruiz. I think he's just a viable punt at a position that we largely say stinks,
Yeah.
and this is not any different of an evening. Like it's another position that stinks. I will say the field is drinking our Kyber Ruiz Kool-Aid, John,
Yeah.
because he's the highest projected catcher of the night.
Yeah, I think it just makes a lot of sense. Ruiz is walking a lot of, not Ruiz, Seng is walking a lot of hitters. The power side, as you mentioned, Kybert from the right side, over 320 with the power there. So on a slate where there isn't a lot of, guys we're looking to spend up for, Kybert makes sense to spend down for him and Cal Rowley, looking like the two catchers that will be popular on this slate here tonight. Over at first base, definitely a lot more options for us. If you wanted to spend up, you have Otani against Medina here at 64. Goldie gets Desclafani at 6K. Pete Alonso at 59. Matt Olson, Yandy Diaz. Yandy Diaz being 5,200 is a sight. The power has been here for Yandy this
Sure
year.
has.
6 home runs already. And then Freddie Freeman at 51. 5K and above tier. Pete Alonso's on the cover of our podcast and live stream here today. So kind of gives an indication of our thoughts of this position.
Yeah, I mean Alonso, and not to say that he hasn't crushed right-handed pitching too, because he's hitting everything out of the ballpark, but 333 average against lefties this year, 5 home runs, 529 Woba. Like, guy is just insane. And the best part about it is like he has Brandon Nimmo getting on base at like a 500 clip. So there's always someone on base.
Yep.
Francisco Lindor is has always been better from the right side of the plate. He's hitting in front of him, and Starling Marte is also hitting 280 against lefties. Like, he has three guys that are constantly on the bases, constantly giving him run production opportunities. And if there is someone on, there's just a good chance there's a 2-3 or a grand slam with Pete Alonso at the plate. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think he is the top first baseman over 5K. I think there's a second option, and I don't think you mentioned him in Freddie Freeman. If you're pivoting off of Pete Alonso, but I like Freddie Freeman quite a bit at 51 if not playing Alonso. All those other guys are obviously elite. Like, Otani gets a guy making his debut. Goldschmidt is elite. Olsen can homer against anybody, but it's Alonso and Freddie Freeman for me.
Obviously, a very limited sample size to this point. Mackenzie Gore against lefties.
Yeah, I saw this.
They're 4 for 12 with 2 homers off of him with 6 walks. He's actually handled righties pretty well. Only 11 for 60, a 180 average, of 460 OPS. But again, kind of only a handful of sample size. Look at the teams he's faced. Take that for what it is. I am just a little surprised the lefty numbers there. 4 for 12 with 2 homers allowed. So, we haven't seen a ton of Mackenzie Gore as a major league pitcher. Could he develop into being a reverse splits guy? Certainly possible. And that's something that we'll have to kind of figure out. It wasn't the case last season in his pitching when he had the opportunity. 13 starts, 16 games. Lefties were 190. He gave up a 260 OPS, 260 average with a 750 OPS against righties. All 7 home runs allowed against right-handed hitters last year. So, again, we'll wait and see what kind of pitcher Mackenzie Gore turns into, but at least for tonight, we're kind of interested in on the Mets here.
Yes. It's hard to necessarily say he's a reverse splits pitcher or not, just given the sample. So
yeah, I agree 100%. Under 5K. There is obviously a group of players here that we've rostered at points during this season. But none of them tonight, given their matchups, are really jumping out. I mean, you always have Nelson Cruz in that spot against a lefty with Drew Smiley at $4,100 there. But there isn't just a ton of – there just isn't a lot for me down here. I would go all the way down maybe if I'm looking at some value. But the mid-tier, it's Nelly, and then that's probably it.
Yeah, I mean – outside of Alonso, Freeman, I think this is a position to spend up on. I don't have much interest in Nelson Cruz. Personally, I know he's in a good spot in the lineup, but it's a bad hitting environment. Smiley's been good. I would take a shot on Jose Abreu, knowing that Josh Fleming is the long reliever.
Yeah.
Long history of hitting lefties well. Righties have crushed Josh Fleming this year, 371 average. 379 WOBA against him. So I'm okay getting to Abreu. I know the power hasn't been there. I'm also okay. I've mentioned it a few times. Like, Jesus Aguilar has 3 home runs over his last 4 games. All 3 of them have been against lefties. I'm not sitting here saying or screaming from the rooftops that get Jose Aguilar into your lineups no matter what. That's not at all what I'm saying. But he hits in the middle of this lineup for Oakland against lefties, and there's a lefty opposing him in a very chalky lefty at that, right? The way to beat chalk sometimes in MLB DFS is just, using guys against him, and Jesus Aguilar is directly the opponent of the chalk pitcher of the slate.
Yeah, right around that same price point. Wilmer Flores. If you're not interested in the Giants but don't really want to play Mats, the one-off play, you can throw Wilmer in there against lefties this year. 364 average, 1,000 OPS. Right, he is kind of back to just smashing left-handed pitching again. There was a few guys in that lineup that hit lefties well. He continues to be one of them. Super small BVP sample size. There's just 4 bats, but he is 2 for 4 with a homer. So off of Mats there. So you mentioned the numbers. Mats against righties. Wilmer's hitting lefties. If anybody is to do damage tonight in this lineup for the Giants, it could very well be Wilmer Flores. And then if we're going a little bit further down for some value, it all depends on your commitment to the play. But Dom Smith is $2,300. He's hitting 6th. You think lefties can get it done against Kodai here tonight? A little revenge narrative play for him in the Mets. Got 3 games with hits in his last 4. Just is it great? No, it's not.
No.
But he's $2,300, so maybe something there. And then Michael Busch is $2K min price, first base, second base eligibility for the Dodgers here against Rosny Contreras, who I don't think we're pitching Rosny against the Dodgers here tonight. So
No, Bush top 100 prospect. So the good thing is if you wanted to use him, you don't have to use him at first because I think he fits perfectly in a wrapper, not even a wraparound second, hitting sixth. Like he fits in if you want to use Freeman and then punt Bush at second base, like that's I think a very solid approach as well.
Yep, I would agree with you there. Just the not that we need the money because we're not really spending up a lot today, but if you wanted to just load up on outfielders on today's slate, like going a 2K first baseman and a 2,700 or whatever it is, catcher with a cheap pitcher will certainly be a way to kind of get you there today for sure.
Yep.
Let's go on over to the second base position here then. Mookie Betts is a second baseman. He's $5,200. Brandon Lau
is he?
He's
second baseman?
Well, they say so. They say he is. Lau hitting cleanup at 5K. What are your thoughts here on the top half of the second base position?
Yeah, second base Mookie Betts is definitely interesting. Lefties have been the more dominant side against Rosie Contreras, but that's not necessarily going to stop me from playing Mookie Betts leading off in an elite spot. Mookie Betts himself has been very good throughout his career hitting righties. So I like Mookie Betts quite a bit. 376 WOBA already this year against righties. So Betts is fine. Brandon Lau, not really getting there. Not a lot of interest. $5,000. Tyro Estrada, 49. Probably leads off against the lefty here. We saw it last night. I know he is expensive, but last night just 1 for 4. But what does he do? He gets on, he steals a base, he scores a run on the stolen base because of 2 errors. He just wreaks havoc, and he has power. So I love Estrada, all formats, not using Albies, Gorman for GPPs.
Is it Nico Horner for us? The Nico Horner fan club here, $4,200. Guy was over 5K last night, triple, 3 RBIs, his lone hit. We know what he can do on the base pass if he starts running. This is the cheapest he's been now since about 2 weeks ago. So get him already on the mound against Waka.
Yes, it's Nico Horner. If you're not paying up for, if you're not using Betts or one of the Dodgers' 3 second basemen, because Betts, Vargas, and Bush are all second base eligible, and I think all 3 of them are all they're all in play. If you're not using one of the 3 Dodgers, it's probably just plug and play Nico Horner because he also, like Estrada, wreaks havoc every time he's on base.
I think the other second baseman I take a peek if we're looking at some value here, a couple actually. Dubon, as we mentioned, the dude just continues to get on base. He had 2 doubles last night. You mentioned Josh Fleming's the long reliever in this instance. That's a lefty-righty matchup for him here. I mean, 329 average hitting leadoff for Houston, right? That's he's even starting to steal a little bit too. Yep. He's got 2 bags stolen over the last 10 games here, so. Yep. He adds that to his game at 3,400. It's pretty decent. Birdie, we talk about stolen bases. We like Elder, but if Birdie gets on, always a possibility to steal 2 or 3 bags pretty quickly there. And then Kim, for me, we generally like to use against lefties. If you think that Smiley may be in a bad spot against the Padres, he's 2,900.
Yeah, I'm okay with Birdie or Kim. I'd prefer the Dodgers personally. Both guys hitting, 5, 6 in the Dodgers lineup, probably in better spots. I know Vargas hasn't been elite, but he's been better. He's been pretty good lately, and we know you've profiled him all year long. This guy is a sick eye. So I like Miguel Vargas quite a bit. I actually like Michael Busch probably a little bit better because he's flat min and Ronzi has been so bad against lefties. Bush hits from the left side. So I honestly, John, like I'm kind of just in on punting
Second.
Bush. Yeah,
Okay.
like
I'll
because
click it. I'll click Bush here. We'll get him in our lineup.
okay, I think he profiles extremely well against Ronzi. He has a ton of power. Um, yeah, I think that's the play.
All right. James, before we hit the third base position, I just want to give a quick shout out to what we got going on here at the Better Sports Network. NFL draft coverage, as we know, kicks off tomorrow. You can play our NFL draft challenge for a chance to win a $100 Visa gift card. Go to bettersports.com right now and predict what's going to happen in the NFL draft. Register for free and play our NFL draft challenge now at bettersports.com. Get yourself a $100 Visa gift card. Nothing too wrong with that there, James.
Nothing wrong with a little gift card. Nothing wrong with a little NFL draft coming up. John, who's going first?
Probably Young.
Yep, probably Young. But
minus 1,600. It feels like the good odds.
So you're saying you're not the Reddit.
I am not
that
the
Will
Reddit
Levis
guy
is going-
telling everybody that Levis is going one.
Okay, just making sure. I wasn't sure if it was you or not, but because I heard from a friend that Will Levis was telling everybody that was you telling everybody.
Right.
Okay.
No.
Just saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
not me. All right, let's go to third base here. Now we get some of that housekeeping taken care of. A lot of top price guys here, and if we're spending down now at second base, we're spending down at catcher. We're throwing at least one value starter in our lineup here. Safe to say we can afford an Arenado, a Riley, a Machado, a Bregman, a Wisdom, whomever we want here when it comes to the top half of the third base position.
Yeah, I think third. I don't know if third is the worst position on the board, but it is really close because, like, I don't love the spot for Arenado. He really hasn't been great this year. 2 home runs and a stolen base, like barely any power. 5 extra base hits so far in 23 games is not great. 5,500 in a terrible hitter's ballpark too. Like, Riley has Alcantara, who have already talked up. Like, this is the reigning Cy Young from last year. There's bad weather in San Diego, and Machado himself has been bad. Like, what do we do? Like, is it just plug Bregman?
I was waiting for you to get there. We got Bregman. He's going to at least face a righty to start. They'll move into Fleming there. I think Houston is a stackable team here tonight. We profiled Dubon. I know we like Bush here, but certainly fits into the lineups today if you wanted to go in that direction. So for me, I do. I think that it is. I think Bregman is the guy for us at third today. It's him like, or Wisdom, right? I mean,
him or Wisdom, and Wisdom has this is a terrible position because Bregman has to hit in the trop. Terrible hitter's environment. There's terrible weather in Chicago, 40 miles an hour, wind blowing in. It's just a bad.
It's not 40 miles an hour. It's 40 degrees.
No, 40 degrees. Yeah, 40 degrees. And
if it's 40 miles an hour, we're playing both pitchers in San Diego.
Right. 40 degrees and poor wind and wind blowing in. Like, sure. Like, so you can get to Wisdom, but yeah, I think Bregman is the better play. I think Bregman is probably the top third baseman. You can get to Eugenio. You can get to JD Davis, who has looked pretty good at the plate lately. But
and Dave, again, it's all if you don't like Mets, like Davis would be an obvious plug there.
Yep. You've always been a Heimer Candelario fan. I mean,
in certain spots, sure.
Lefties against
his better side from the right side, not the left side.
Better side is against the right.
I mean, I like a Ledmus, but it's Sandoval. So I mean, if you're not, Ledmus Diaz has hit lefties well in the past. Obviously he's on Oakland. He kind of sucks this season, but we're kind of drawing straws here at this point with these guys.
Let's see what the rostership suggests there. One guy we didn't mention is going to be the chalkiest third baseman of the night, John. That is Anthony Rendon, who is been very bad.
I don't really want anything to do with Anthony Rendon, but sure.
He is 2 for his last 7. He has back-to-back double-digit fantasy point games. I understand that there is a debut happening here with Medina, Medina was very good in the minors last year. He's been pretty good this year. He has a lot of strikeout appeal. I don't know. Also, shout out to Chad, who's a little. Uh, you and everybody else who had Jordan Walker shoot up their draft boards are disappointed that he got sent down. And we said it yesterday. Multiple people at Fantasy Alarm. Jordan Walker had played 3 of the last 7 games. Like,
Yeah. He got off to such a good start too, but they just like never gave him an opportunity. The Newbar came back and they
yep,
just didn't have
too many
room for him.
guys. Just so many guys on that team.
He'll
So
hit
many.
his way back. I wouldn't say you blew up in your face. Hold on to him. He'll get called back up when he's just mashing AAA pitching. So.
And Paul DeYoung is on this roster right now, so like we obviously know Paul DeYoung is not gonna make it too long on this.
Yeah, they'll send him down. He'll earn a new position, and then he'll come back up.
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
100%. All right, let's go to shortstop here. Again, you got Trey Turner against Gilbert. Wander's got Brown. Bogart's got Smiley. Not like, not the best spots for those top options here. I think we kind of agreed on last night. We're just plugging Lindor in, and we'll see what he does against Gore here.
Yeah, I mean, Lindor has long been elite against lefties, and I think the Mets are going to garner some love tonight. Lindor has 3 home runs against Southpaws already this year, 436 WOBA to go with it. Hitting in the middle of the lineup, it's a great spot for him. Mackenzie Gore has been good, but let's see if the reverse splits aspect of Mackenzie Gore evens out here. And I think if you're not playing Lindor, $600 less, Jeremy Pena running like a madman lately. Yeah. 5 stolen bases over his last 10 games.
When he gets on base, it's basically what he's got to do because he's not really hitting the ball well. So
he hadn't been. He has been of late. Hits in 3 of 4, hitting 270 over his last 10 games. 5 extra base hits over that span. So like
he had a 3 stolen base game during that stretch.
Yeah. So like the upside for Pena, who's back up near the top of the lineup as well, hitting second. Love that. We've already said how bad Fleming has been against righty. So I like Jeremy Pena quite a bit, 4,200. If you're not playing Lindor and Tommy Edman, I don't know what the power has been lately for this dude, but he homered again.
So he has double-digit home run power. He doesn't have 20 home run power, but he can hit 10 to 15.
And we're just 4 though.
I know. I'm just saying, like, for whatever reason, they took him. This is a guy that had back-to-back years with 90-plus runs.
Right.
Last year, I think he led the league in stolen bases. And then they, hitting him 9th. They weren't, hitting him in a good spot of the order. I like Tommy Edman. If he's in another good spot in the lineup here tonight, I would be willing to give him a run. He gets a righty on the mound, so there is potential for him to run there. So it's him for sure, I think. And yeah, I mean, Pena will fit those Astros stacks here tonight. So just the way he goes with Bregman, Dubon, Pena, whomever you want, Jordan in that lineup, it all kind of fits together. Let's go to outfield here. We've talked about it. I'm just going to hit a few buttons and just get an idea of what we're looking at for cash left over. I got Kybert. I got Sandoval, Bush, Bregman, and Lindor. We need another pitcher. I'll click Sandy just for the sake of the more expensive player. That leaves us $4,900 a player for a first baseman and 3 outfielders. We liked Alonso. $4,600 a play for 3 outfielders is what we're working with, and we know there's going to be value. And if we wanted to go Elder instead of Sandy, it's 47. So plenty of cash to work with here, James.
Yeah, plenty of cash to work with, and you could even be a value fader at pitcher and use Sandy and mid-tier guy or Gilbert. So I think there's a lot of different directions, especially where we're using 2 guys under 3K offensively. In the outfield, the Angels obviously are going to get a lot of love tonight. I think
you like the Angels in the outfield.
Nice, John. You know what? It's been long enough. Well, I'm
capable.
It's been long enough where I've been carrying the dad jokes along, and you just even Adam. Shout out Adam, giving John his flowers. We're just giving John his flowers because
I'm capable. I'm capable of pulling one out every now and then.
You've been letting you've been letting me just go down with the shit. I said Jopra yesterday. That's how bad it's gotten, and you finally, I'm proud of you for that. But the Angels in the outfield are like the highest projected rostered players tonight in the outfield. 3 of the 4 highest projected outfielders are all Angels in the outfield,
Right.
John. Great movie. Got to watch that again.
True.
We'll get my wife to watch it.
Do a little,
She's definitely never seen it.
they get
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. She's definitely never seen it. So, um, it's hard not to like them. We just don't know what to make of Medina. Like we've seen a bunch of Oakland pitchers make their debuts this year. Miller looked really good in his debut. Did not look really good in his second start. It's a good hitting environment in
yeah.
Los Angeles. So like I do like Otani, Trout. I don't like Ward as much. I don't know where that rostership's coming from. Mostly probably just price 4,500. It's the cheapest he's probably been in a while.
It feels
Definitely,
like whenever I play Trout and Otani, they don't come through. So it's just kind of the way it goes here. So
yeah, it's just hard to like. Trout has been amazing of late. I mean, he's been amazing from day one, but like 386 over his last 10, just casually again, 1,000 OPS.
yeah. When you're paying this price, you need the 21 and 24 fantasy points. 5
Correct.
points and 10 points aren't doing it for
Correct.
you. So
Well, that's where the upside of Acuna comes if you're not playing Alcantara. Because if Acuna,
Acuna last night leads off with a double, steals third, scores a run. James and I are like, he's already got 12 fantasy points.
yeah, I mean,
It took him a minute.
took him to actually a minute.
Yeah.
Our man Ice Through here, John, is asking a BVP question. I'll have you answer the BVP questions because he is. Ice Through is a big BVP guy, as we've known.
Yeah.
I am not. So like, I don't care. It's a great 14 for 27 is great. Not the best environment. Goldie has not been the same guy this year.
I'm never going to say not to play Paul Goldschmidt, right?
Right.
Like the guy can wake up and be a monster at any point. So listen, if he fits your builds tonight, he's going to be contrarian probably, I would imagine.
For sure.
Yeah, listen, put him in a lineup. I definitely don't not like him. It's just the way that we've gone about targeting matchups and pitching tonight. He's not the guy we're going to. We're clearly going to Pete Alonso. But if you need the money or if you like the player, then go ahead. I mean, they're right around the same range. So if it fits your spot, it fits your spot there.
Yeah, 5th highest owned first baseman in terms of projection tonight. Higher than Pete Alonso, by the way. I think that's just giving Mackenzie Gore his flowers as opposed to Pete Alonso. But yeah, I mean, if you want to go, I can't ever tell you not to play ball.
Yeah, 27 at bats is like 8 games, so yeah, it's fine. And you're right. He's 14 of 27. So yeah, I'm fine going there if you want. He's a good player, so it works. If it works for your lineups, it certainly works for what we're looking for here. Other than the Angels, obviously, we kind of look at the guys down a little bit lower than them. Does anybody sort of jump out to you? I mean, I do think you can use Mookie, obviously, in the outfield. Hap is sitting there hitting cleanup, or hitting third, rather, against Waka. Seiya's hitting cleanup. I know you kind of liked the Cubs. The updated weather that I'm seeing is only 5 miles an hour blowing in. That's not really a ton to... The cold, I guess, is more of the play there because it is only 40 degrees. But, if you think the Cubs get after Waka today, certainly a spot to kind of throw at them. It's kind of a long way of me saying, like, I don't love the top guys, right? Julio Rodriguez at 58, sure. Trout, sure. These guys can all go ahead and have slate breaking spots to be in. So totally okay for me. If you want to spend up somewhere, go for it.
Yeah, I'm usually happy to get to Ian, but what?
Every time we just lost 4 watchers.
It's tough. That's tough.
They heard
Come
that.
Back. No.
Even through the delay, they sensed it coming, and they're like, you know what, we're done.
That was cute. That was queued up too perfectly for me.
Yeah.
That was queued up so perfectly. You said it, and I immediately thought it, and I don't know what else you said the entire time until you stopped talking because that joke was queued up in my brain.
It's okay. Ryan in chat wants to know our feelings on Sandy as a pivot off of Elders. Is he going to be on a pitch count, though? You obviously are a fan of Sandy tonight. You think he's past the biceps issue there. Sandy Alcantara is a guy that is like notorious for throwing complete games. So I would be surprised if he's not ready to go that they would hold him up. I'm just not as in love with him tonight. But certainly if you're not going Elder, then yeah, Sandy has the most upside probably of the slate. So
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything specific yet on the Alcantara pitch count. Obviously, it's been depressed. But with them saying, with them pushing him to start back and clearing him from the biceps issue, I don't expect there to be as much of a limit as there's been. So if we get Sandy back to 100 pitches, I think he could be the leading. Not saying anything too bold here, but he could obviously be the leading scorer of the slate in terms of pitchers.
Yep. Um, Mid group here on the outfielder spots. I mean, McCutcheon's been looking pretty good. Nimmo's leading off here again. Outman at 4K feels kind of like a lock in lineups. Kelenic, the way he's playing, hitting third tonight.
Hitting third,
right?
Yep.
I mean, if we play Kelenic and Outman, I think we can almost pitch have whatever spend up outfielder we want at this point. So just going to do a quick fill in of this lineup here. Kybert, Alonso. We had Bush. Third base was Bregman. Shortstop was Lindor. With Kelenic and Outman, $6,300. So we can go anybody under. I mean, Trout's at 59. We can one off Trout here and finish off the lineup. We can make a connecting stack with Betts to go with Outman if you wanted to.
I got one for you.
Give it to me.
I think it's kind of interesting. And I know it could potentially be lefty for a couple at bats, but talk about connecting stacks. Kyle Tucker, 5,700, hitting third tonight. No Jordan in the lineup. We're gonna get the righty matchup, obviously. Voucher first, which is appealing. But Kyle Tucker against left-handed bats this year, 308 average, 402 WOBA. So not really scared off by the lefty spot for Tucker. So just a thought,
had 13 of his 30 home runs last year versus lefties. So.
Yeah, him and Jordan are both like absolute monsters against both ends of the split. And obviously we don't have Alvarez tonight, but Kyle Tucker hitting third is incredibly intriguing because on top of the power that he provides, he's another guy who ends the year 30-20 stolen bases. You're like, oh, Kyle Tucker. I mean, first round pick in fantasy drafts for a reason, right? Because he has the 30-20 upside.
If I was to pour slight water on that, lefties are 2 for 18 with 7 strikeouts versus Fleming.
Yeah, I saw that.
Righties absolutely demolished.
Crush. Yeah.
850 OPS. So could go Tucker if you want. That's fine. You said Julio Rodriguez helps with the Kelenic stack there. Trout, you mentioned as the one-off play. Definitely could go in a bunch of different directions. Quickly, any other value outfielders on your radar here tonight?
Yeah, Julks from Houston is hitting 6 tonight. Love that. $2,800, hitting 350 over his last 10 games. Has been awesome lately. Jake Myers, another guy who hits lefties well. Jason Hayward tonight, John, hitting third for the Dodgers. Lefties have destroyed Roansy Contreras. That is where Roansy Contreras struggles the most. I obviously am concerned a little bit to see Jason Hayward hitting third in the year 2023. 3 home runs.
170 on the year?
Yeah, I mean, 3 home runs against righties. Roansy Contreras, 371 batting average allowed against lefties, 900 OPS, 379 WOBA. And LA throwing out 2, 3, 4, 6 in their lineup with lefties. Like the top half of their lineup is all lefty bats with Mookie and Miguel Vargas mixed in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, am I completely sold on Jason Hayward? No. But he's free. And he's hitting third against a guy who struggles mightily against lefties.
Sure. All right, we got a couple minutes left here. Give me the outfielder. We got 6,300 to spend. Who is it? Lineup as currently constituted is Elder, Sandoval, Ruiz, Alonso, Bush, Bregman, Lindor, Kelenic, Outman.
Someone between Mookie, Tucker, and Trout probably would be.
You kind of sold me on the Trout. Let's go Trout one off. Work?
Yeah, I mean, it's us and a lot of our friends are going to be on Mike Trout tonight.
Totally fine. Quickly, Ryan wants to know thoughts on Hunter Brown. It's good. It's a good pitching environment. Tampa Bay's just been really good. So if you think he can pitch around the cut death by 1,000 cut lineup of Tampa Bay, he's fine. He's a mid-tier guy. I think we kind of like Logan Gilbert a little bit better tonight.
Agreed.
So that wraps up today's podcast. Everybody live stream. Follow us over at the Better Sports Network. Check out everything we got for the NFL draft coverage here. James and I will be back tomorrow. Good luck, everybody. We'll be in the Discord. We'll talk to you all later.
NFL draft is now officially open.
Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm present the 2023 NFL Draft Bettercast, covering the fantasy football and sports betting angles of the NFL Draft.
Are you ready? Let's get it started.
Rookie scouting reports, NFL player comparisons, instant projections, draft props, and live betting. Live reports from Fantasy Alarm's Britt Flynn in Kansas City. Follow the NFL Draft and play our live Q&A contest for your chance to win fabulous prizes.
With the first pick,
This is the 2023 NFL Draft Bettercast on Fantasy Alarm and Better Sports Network.